Okay, so you get a commission to draw two different characters. The issue is that one looks like this and the other looks like this. What do? My name is Solcani. Here's how to create color cohesion in your art. By the way, if you want access to both the PSD file I used for the drawing in this video and the full-length speedpaint, including me rendering it, for free, watch until the end. So I saw this tweet a while back that read something like, imagine getting into a relationship and your personas look ugly together. And here's the thing. I don't have this problem, and neither should you. You can draw any characters together if you think about it strategically. Here's how. If I notice that two designs have a color that is similar but slightly different, I may opt to only use one color to represent both. Sometimes this means taking a color directly from one design and putting it on the other, and other times this means finding an in-between of both and then applying it to both characters. This mostly depends on how different the colors are. It's important to not lose scope of the design in translation, so use this in moderation. Oh, by the way, this tactic also works on backgrounds. If a character has a particularly busy design with lots of colors, you can get away with making an entire drawing with just the character's palette. Here's a commission I did in which I decided to draw the entire illustration using almost exclusively the character's pre-existing palette, minus maybe 4 colors. If you still want a different vibe, you can apply an effect over the whole thing afterwards for an extra touch, if you'd like. The purpose of this is to bring cohesiveness to the piece. When there are too many things going on, too many colors, it can be hard to decipher what is what. Making slight adjustments here and there can help simplify the palette. Similar to color cohesion is shape cohesion. Bring shapes from one character into another or into the background. This can be done when two characters are clearly meant to have differing personalities in their shape language. If one is sharp and spiky and the other is soft and bubbly, you can add spiky ends to soft shapes or give curves amongst spikes. If you don't want to do that, the alternative is to exaggerate those differences intentionally to give a piece in which contrast is prioritized. It can look good either way, so choose what is most fitting for the drawing. Putting aspects of each character into the other creates motifs and visual harmony in your shape language. Watch your contrast. Some characters have a lot of contrast and some only have a little. Finding a middle ground between what your characters have in common or in difference will help you fit them together. If a character is very dark, I may lighten some of their tones or darken some colors on the other. What I'm really trying to avoid here is a case where one character is entirely black and the other is entirely white, because then I can't add lighting to one and I can't add shading to the other. So in that scenario, I darken the white, maybe to the hue of the main fur color on the other character, or lighten the darkest tone. Take a color from one character and use it as a slight soft shading on the other. Try adding a gradient with an airbrush to an area that might not have as much light on it. And keep it subtle. This is kind of an add-on to the contrast part, but I do it in literally every piece and I think it gives everything a nice soft look, so I thought I'd make it into its own category. One thing I want to mention before getting into the demo. In the intro, I used my example as a commission, but when you're doing commissions, you always want to be true to the characters that the client is giving you. They're putting a ton of trust in you to make work of a character they probably care a lot about, so do your due diligence in respecting that person's creation and holding true to that design. Your goal is to enhance the client's vision of the drawing, not wash it out. For personal work, though, feel free to go ham. Since I'm using characters from my friends, I might take a few extra creative liberties in pushing things to my vision. Our test dummies will be Z_ZMag8's Tuna, and an OC I designed when I was 13 who now belongs to one of my friends. They're about as different as I could find, so let's go make them a pretty little picture. Okay, so I know this video is mainly about color, but I wanted to show a little bit more about my sketching process and the shape cohesion I mentioned. The first thing I like to do before I even start drawing is to examine the characters I'm given. Personally, I think a lot when I draw, so having a minute to just analyze helps me realize what the piece looks like inside of my brain. I knew that it would be harder for me to make Razor light than Tuna dark, so I decided that I'd have Razor be my main theme of sorts. So, edgy it will be. But deciding on a theme beforehand is really helpful because it lets you know what you're aiming for with your colors. That's also why I colored my thumbnail for this piece, despite usually sticking to grayscale. I talk about this in one of my other videos, I think it's the lasso tool one. I also noticed that Tuna has a really long tail, which I know that Razor doesn't have like a particularly characteristically long tail, but I thought that it would be a cute parallel and a compositional tool to have them both sweeping outwards and kind of back towards the focus of the piece, their faces. So I decided to do that. Other than that, I still had to fill up the space of the sides somehow, so that's also why I decided to add some shapes behind them. Razor was designed to be edgy and sharp, so I figured I'd give him like a blood splatter shape. Tuna though, she's all bubbles, so I took the flower from her shirt and decided to use those as background pieces. And after that, I decided to flip them. Razor gets the flower, Tuna gets blood. It adds to the opposites attract theme I've got going on, and I think it's kind of humorous to have them have their opposite symbols. One note is that when I get to coloring, you're gonna see it makes the most difference on drawing them together, and it might make it seem like all of this prior forethought is unnecessary, but it acts as the fundamental basis that the rest of the piece stands on. Coloring is gonna be very present, but it's not everything. The underlying cohesion elevates your piece. In this scenario, the characters are technically somewhat similar in their outfit and pose as well, and even though that was intentional, you might not always have that luxury. In that case, those subtleties are even more important. For coloring them, here's the difference between their OG palettes and the palettes that I gave them. It does sacrifice some of their original colors, but when I add shadows and lighting and put them into an environment, it's not going to look so drastic. It'll just subtly make them more cohesive. I grabbed Razor's purple and applied to Tuna's darkest fur color, making her more cool-toned, and then grabbed Tuna's original orange hue and give Razor's fur a general wash with a hue layer on low opacity. I only do this to his fur because I wanted Razor's accessories to be a general thematic motif. That's also why I added green to Tuna's cherries and made Razor's collar charm red, even though those weren't aspects of the original design. It adds another parallel that I find really appealing. So that's kinda how I get my flats down, and now onto rendering. Adding a multiply over yard can be the easiest way to add color cohesion. Honestly, for simpler drawings, you can do that and not have to do any of the other stuff and get away with it. But it won't have the same level of precision that doing it by hand does, so I like to do it this way. I apply a shadow layer, a main light layer, and a rim or bounce light layer. This time I used pink to match Tuna, and blue on add glow layers. After that, everything else is pretty much just rendering by hand, incorporating colors and paying attention to where each color is heaviest. You'll see me add some green to Tuna even though there's no green light source because it was previously all on the left side of the drawing. It adds some balance to keep it on the right as well. Do the same for everything else and you're done. The PSD and full-length speed paint will be available for free on my Ko-fi. It'll be linked in the description below, so go check it out. If you make something with the tips I mentioned, @ me on Twitter so I can see it. I'd love to see if they helped anyone. My username is soul_canny, linked in the description below. I always aim to give tips that help you improve immediately and concretely, so if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. Anyway, that's all from me, so thanks for watching.